$7. That's exactly what my freedom cost, though I didn't realize it at the time. 7 worn-out $1 bills in a cheap cardboard envelope. This was my parents' gift for my 18th birthday. Before the video starts, don't forget to subscribe and drop a like. Enjoy the video. My name is Lily, and on the day I officially became an adult, my world, which was already hanging by a thread, completely fell apart. We were standing in the backyard of our immaculate suburban home. The sun flooded the perfectly manicured lawn where guests bustled about. Family, friends, neighbors, all those who came with fake smiles and expensive gifts. The air smelled of roses from my mother's garden and the barbecue my father was grilling. Everything was perfect. Too perfect. At the center of all this splendor stood my older sister, Jessica. It wasn't her birthday. Hers had been 6 months ago, but that never mattered. She was always the center of attention. And today was another one of her triumphs. With mysterious smiles, my parents asked everyone to gather on the driveway. There, tied with a gigantic red bow, sat a dazzling white, brand-new BMW. "Jessica, darling," my father began, his voice trembling with pride. "We know how hard you've studied to get into the university of your dreams. You deserve the very best. This is for you to make your trips to college comfortable and safe." The crowd erupted in applause. Jessica, the perfect daughter with perfect hair and a perfect smile, pressed her hands to her lips in feigned shock and then rushed to hug our parents. I stood to the side, clapping along with everyone else, feeling the smile freeze on my face, twisting into an ugly grimace. I knew not to expect anything similar. I was never Jessica. I was just her shadow, a pale reflection, an accessory to the perfect family picture. But not even in my wildest imagination could I have anticipated the humiliation that awaited me. When the wave of excitement around the car subsided, my mother walked over to me. In her hands was a small white envelope that looked pathetic and orphaned against the backdrop of the gleaming BMW hood. "Lily, happy birthday, sweetie," she said, handing me the envelope. Her smile was strained, her eyes darting around as if she were embarrassed. "We thought this would be symbolic. Your first very own money as an adult. A keepsake." I opened the envelope. Inside lay 7 $1 bills. $7. As a keepsake. On the very same day that my sister, who wasn't even the birthday girl, was gifted a car worth tens of thousands of dollars. I looked up at my parents. My father had already returned to the guests, laughing at some joke. My mother looked at me with an expression I knew so well, a mixture of pity and annoyance. "Oh, come on, Lily, don't make that face. It's just a symbolic gesture." Symbolic. She was right. It was the most symbolic gesture of my entire life. Symbolized everything. Every missed school play because Jessica had an important practice. Every word of praise for my excellent grades that was cut short because Jessica brought home another sports trophy. Every, "Lily, be quiet. Jessica has an important exam tomorrow." Every, "Lily, why can't you be more like your sister?" $7. $1 for each of the deadly sins of my existence in this family. I clenched the bills in my fists so tightly that my nails dug into my palm. I said nothing. I just nodded, turned around and walked into the house, up to my room on the second floor. The noise of the party reached me as if from underwater. I closed the door and leaned against it. I didn't cry. The tears had run out years ago. Inside, there was only a ringing, cold emptiness that was slowly beginning to fill with white-hot rage. I lay on my bed, staring at the ceiling, and the memories I had tried to bury for years flooded back with new force. 10. The school play is The Wizard of Oz. Jessica, of course, is playing Dorothy. She sings, she dances, she's the star. I was given the tiny role of the mayor of Munchkinland. I had only 2 lines, but I rehearsed them for weeks. I made myself a hat out of cardboard and painted it blue. I was so proud. On opening night, I peeked out from behind the curtain into the packed auditorium, searching for my parents. Their seats were empty. After the show, when I found them backstage, still in my silly costume, they were busy congratulating Jessica. A crowd surrounded her, they were giving her flowers, and my father was proudly telling someone that his daughter was a future Broadway star. When I approached and asked if they had seen me, my mother distractedly patted my cheek. "Oh, sweetie, sorry we were a little late, got stuck in traffic. But we're sure you were wonderful. Now run along, don't interrupt. Jessica is giving an interview to the school newspaper." That night, I threw my blue hat in the trash. 15. The district science fair. My project on sugar crystallization won first place. A huge blue winner's ribbon and a check for $100. I ran home, clutching the certificate and ribbon to my chest, my feet barely touching the ground with happiness. I burst into the house shouting, "Mom, Dad, I won!" They were sitting in the kitchen. My father looked up from his newspaper. My mother put down her phone. "Oh, that's wonderful, dear," my father said, not even glancing at my ribbon. Then my mother said, "That's great, Lily. By the way, Jessica just called us. She got into Yale. On a full scholarship. Can you imagine, our child is going to an Ivy League school." They spent the rest of the evening calling all our relatives and friends, sharing the news about Jessica. My blue ribbon remained on the kitchen table, next to the dinner crumbs. The next morning I found it in the trash can, apparently swept away by accident during cleanup. I'm 17. My first serious boyfriend, Mark. He was an artist. Kind, a little shy, with hair always stained with paint. He saw the world in colors and shapes that were invisible to others. He saw me. When I brought him to meet my parents, dinner was held in icy silence. They asked him perfunctory questions about his hobby, and then spent the entire evening talking about Jessica's fiancé, Ryan, who was in law school and interning at a prestigious firm. After Mark left, my father told me, "Lily, I hope this isn't serious. You need someone stable, reliable, like Ryan. Not this artist." They didn't even try to get to know him. They just compared him to Jessica's perfect choice and delivered their verdict. A month later, Mark and I broke up. The pressure was unbearable. I couldn't make him feel second-rate around my family. Each memory was like a hammer blow on an anvil. And with each blow, my resolve hardened. $7. It wasn't just a slap in the face. It was a statement. A statement that I was nothing. Blank space. An expense to be written off. And in the ringing silence of my room, I realized they were right. I was superfluous. Superfluous in their perfect family, in their perfect house, in their perfect life. But I didn't want to be superfluous anymore. I just wanted to be. The clock on the nightstand showed 3:57 a.m. The house was submerged in silence. The party noise had long since died down. Everyone was asleep. Jessica was probably dreaming of driving her new BMW. My parents were dreaming of their perfect older daughter. Got out of bed. I moved quietly and methodically, like a surgeon during an operation. No panic. No tears. Just a cold, clear purpose. I pulled an old hiking backpack from the closet. I didn't take many things. Just the essentials. Jeans, a couple of t-shirts, a hoodie. Toothbrush. I opened a desk drawer and took out a small wooden box. It held my real treasures. A dried flower Mark had given me, a movie ticket from my first date, a few photos with friends, the ones who were my real family. I placed the box at the very bottom of the backpack. Then I grabbed my old laptop and its charger. I had just over $200 in my bank account. Money I'd saved from my part-time job at the local library. It would have to be enough for a while. I walked over to the desk and picked up the envelope with the $7. I carefully smoothed out the bills and put them in the front pocket of my backpack. This would be my reminder. My talisman. The price of my new life. The last step was the most important. I sat on the bed and picked up my phone. Opened my contacts. I found Mom. My finger hovered over the block button for a second. No farewell messages. No explanations. They didn't deserve them. Pressed it. Dad. Block. Jessica. Block. Then I opened all my social media. Facebook, Instagram. I blocked them everywhere. I deleted all the family group chats. I was scrubbing them from my life like a virus from an operating system. The last thing was the online banking app. My account was linked to a joint family account. I knew they had access. I found the transfer function and sent every last cent, $234.58, to my friend Sarah's account, after sending her a quick message asking her to transfer it back to me once I opened a new account. Now my account balance was zero. They could no longer control anything. Put on my backpack. It wasn't heavy. It turned out that in 18 years of living in this house, I hadn't accumulated much worth taking. I went to the door and looked around my room one last time. The room of a girl who had never truly existed. I felt no sadness, no nostalgia, only relief. I quietly opened the door. I tiptoed down the hallway, past my parents' room, past Jessica's room. I knew which step on the staircase creaked and carefully stepped over it. Downstairs in the entryway, I put on my old sneakers. I didn't write a farewell note. My disappearance would be more eloquent than any words. I turned the key in the lock. The quiet click sounded like a gunshot in the night silence. I slipped out the door and closed it just as quietly behind me. I didn't look back. I just walked down the dark sleeping street toward the bus stop on the highway. The night air was cool and fresh. I took a deep breath. For the first time in my life, I was breathing freely. I had no home, no money, and no plan. But I had myself. And $7 in my pocket. The first few weeks were hell. I took a bus to the nearest big city, a place where no one knew me. I rented the cheapest motel room, one that smelled of dampness and hopelessness. Sarah transferred my money to me, but I knew it would run out quickly. Every day, I visited dozens of cafes, shops, and diners, looking for a job. You have no experience. We're not hiring. Leave your application, we'll call you. These phrases became the soundtrack to my desperation. I survived on the cheapest sandwiches and instant noodles. At night, I lay on the creaky bed and stared at the ceiling, fighting off panic attacks. Fear was my constant companion. But every time despair crept up my throat, I would take out those $7. I would look at them and remember the humiliation, the emptiness in my mother's eyes, the shine of the BMW. And the rage would give me strength again. I didn't leave just to give up. Finally, I got lucky. I was hired as a barista in a small coffee shop called The Morning Grind. The work was hard. Waking up at 5 in the morning, an endless stream of sleepy and irritable customers, my feet aching by the end of the shift. But it was a job. It was my own money. And it was freedom. The owner of the coffee shop was an elderly man named George. He was a man of few words, but he was kind. He didn't ask unnecessary questions, seeing that I didn't want to talk about my past. He simply taught me how to brew the perfect espresso and create latte art. Soon I began to recognize the regular customers. Students, office workers, freelancers with their laptops. I became a part of this little world. It was at the coffee shop that I met Chloe. She was an artist who came in every day for her double Americano. She would sit at a table by the window and draw in her sketchbook for hours. One day, she noticed me doodling on a napkin during my short break. She came over and looked at my drawing. "You've got talent," she said simply. Those were the first words of praise that weren't followed by a comparison to someone else. We talked for a long time that day. I told her a little about myself. Not the whole story, but enough for her to understand. She became my first real friend in this city. Chloe inspired me to return to something I loved but had abandoned. Photography. As a child, I had an old film camera, but my parents considered it a waste of time. With my first paychecks from the coffee shop, I bought a used digital camera. I started shooting everything. City streets in the fog, the smiles of strangers, raindrops on glass, the play of light and shadow in alleyways. I created an online portfolio, just to have a place to store my work. One day, Chloe showed my photos to a friend of hers who played in a local indie band. They needed promo photos. They couldn't pay much, but they offered me $100 and tickets to all their concerts. I agreed. The photo shoot took place in an abandoned warehouse. I was nervous, but when I held the camera, everything else ceased to exist. I captured their energy, their passion. The photos turned out raw and authentic. When the band posted them on social media, something incredible happened. Other musicians started contacting me, as did models, and even a couple who was looking for a photographer for their small, informal wedding. Took every job. Each shoot was a challenge but also a step forward. I continued working at the coffee shop and did photography on weekends and evenings. I slept 4 or 5 hours a night, but I had never felt more alive. After a year, I was able to quit the morning grind. I rented a small but bright studio apartment that served as both my home and my office. I registered my own business. Lily's Lens. Name. My business. I was no longer afraid. I learned how to pay bills, negotiate with clients, and stand up for myself. I was building my life brick by brick. I was surrounded by people who valued me for who I was. Chloe, the musicians I worked with, other freelancers. We were a motley crew of dreamers and creators, supporting one another. This was the family I had chosen for myself. 5 years have passed. I am standing in the middle of my own photo studio. A spacious loft with high ceilings and huge windows overlooking the city. The walls are covered with my work. Portraits, landscapes, reportage shots. Today is a special day. I am opening my first solo exhibition. Guests fill the studio. Soft music plays, people drink wine and discuss my photographs. I see Chloe proudly showing someone my favorite piece. A portrait of an old man I took on a city street. That photo recently won a prestigious photography award. I see George, my former boss from the coffee shop. He came up to me, shook my hand and said, "I always knew there was something special about you. I am no longer that scared girl who ran away from home with a backpack. I am a woman who built herself from the ground up." I didn't think about my old family. I didn't look up their social media profiles or try to find out how they were doing. Maybe they tried to find me, maybe not. Maybe they just wrote me out of their lives like a failed project and breathed a sigh of relief. I didn't care. Their power over me vanished the night I closed the door of their house behind me. Later, when the guests had left, I was alone in the studio. I walked over to my desk. In a small frame under glass lay 7 old, worn-out $1 bills. Picked up the frame. I looked at them not with bitterness or resentment, but with a strange, quiet gratitude. This wasn't the payment for my humiliation. It was the starting price of my life. The most important investment ever made in me, however unintentional. They thought they were showing me my place. In reality, they were showing me the way out. I put the frame back in its place. Outside the window, the night city stretched out, shining with millions of lights. Each of those lights was someone's life, someone's story. And one of them was now mine. I was no longer someone's shadow, someone's sister, or someone's daughter. I was just Lily. And that was more than enough.